You're listening to the Empowering Process podcast with your host, Gail Kraft. Listen as she holds frank discussions around how your purpose, being present, and trusting your power impacts your life. Whether you're an entrepreneur, leader, or developing your vision, you'll find wisdom and insights you can utilize right now. Welcome your host, Gail Kraft.
Well, hello, everybody. This is Gail Kraft from the Empowering Process podcast. And I have with me a very amazing woman. And I say that all the time, but I always mean it. And this is Beverly Price. She is the founder of Her Self-Expression. And there is a lot around that business. There's a podcast, there's a website, there is empowerment groups. So we will talk about that near the end of our discussion. But Beverly is here to talk about how she got involved in this in the first place. And it started um, almost in vitro, right? Almost in vitro, with
Yep.
literal scars. Your mother's scars affected you. And I think that is so amazing because there are emotional scars, there are psychological scars, and then there are physical scars that cause psychological scars. So Beverly, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, absolutely, Gail. Thanks so much for having me. It's an honor.
It's going to be so much fun. So tell us a little bit, a little bit about what it was like as a child, um, thinking that you had caused maim and pain with your mother, and how that played out in your childhood.
Well, just to give kind of the backstory to it, my mother tried for 13 years to have a baby, and she wanted one desperately and couldn't have one. And back then it was endometriosis, but they didn't know what to do. And so she found a doctor that gave her surgery or several surgeries so that she could get pregnant. Well, she had the first surgery, and in order to do that, they made an incision from below her breast all the way down her stomach. And she was able to get pregnant. And as she went through the pregnancy, as her stomach got bigger, that scar stretched. So it turned into a very wide strip all the way down her stomach. And I looked at that scar as I shouldn't have ever been born, that I did this to her. And she looked at that scar as, look what I've done to have a baby. And so right there, we came at the world looking totally different. But then a change happened to her. She wanted so much to have a baby that then when I came, I was a crying, pooping, normal baby. And I think she expected a baby to make her feel complete and whole. And no, as you know, nobody can do that for yourself except you. So I went through my life feeling like I was a disappointment. And that disappointment has plagued me for years and years and years, and affected everything I did, leading to no self-worth, no self-esteem, negative self-talk, all of those aspects. And in addition, my parents gave me everything materially that they could, but they didn't know, they weren't skilled to foster self-worth and self-esteem. And I'm not criticizing them because they weren't taught by their parents. So that's how I came to be this very insecure, scared, almost self-loathing woman.
Yes, and what's interesting is this feeling of lack of self-worth for me, the way
Mm-hmm.
that it manifested, because I had also mine were abandonment issues.
Yes.
I had to prove that I was worthy. So
Mm-hmm.
I was the one who excelled in business because I did more than the next person. It
Right.
had to be perfect, had to be right
Mm-hmm.
on, and had to be timely. And And it was exhausting. And I would bring work home and I'd work until 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, and just to be better than the next person to prove that I deserve to be there.
And I was right along with you. I had felt the need to achieve, hoping that I would get attention. And what I found was that most of my younger life through my 30s and 40s was all built to get that attention I didn't get. And so I went from not only being, on one hand, being this workaholic, super successful corporate executive at a time where women weren't corporate executives,
Yep.
to a woman that had multiple failed marriages, going from one man to the next, not understanding why he wasn't making her feel better, and had to come to terms with the only person that can make me feel better is me. It was like I had a hole in my soul, and the only thing that could fill it were my spiritual beliefs.
And that's the crux of it. So many of us believe that we are here to save someone, or we are here
Mhm.
to, right? Or we are here to do whatever. And we aren't. We aren't.
Right,
The only person that can solve my issues is me,
right.
right? And when I know for me, and I can only speak for me, right? I know that when I have finally faced myself, owned my own stories, realized that they're stories,
Mhm.
right? And rewrote my stories, I am now in a position in my life where what you do doesn't affect me,
Mhm.
because I recognize that's not me. I can't
Right.
control you, right? And if I'm not meaning any harm, then your reaction is something that maybe you need to work on,
Yeah.
right?
And what I found was, through this process of no self-worth, that I also taught people how to treat me. And the treatment I got and that I taught them how to do was very negative. And it was abusive, it was violent, it was negative, it was critical. Um, and so I had this one part of my life successful, and this other part of my life, the way I perceived, is failure after failure after failure. And even when I had children, I found that the only place I felt like I was doing well was at work. So I spent more time at work than I did working on a relationship with and raising my children. And, our relationship today has suffered because of that. And I've had to do a whole lot of work and make amends to be able to establish a better relationship with them. But it's
Yeah.
just amazing to me how, for example, I saw some statistics that said 79% of women don't feel confident. And let's see, 4 out of 5 women consider themselves less than other women. And to me, that's absolutely a tragedy, but it says where I was.
Well,
That's
and
who I was.
right. And what's interesting, um, this whole womanhood experience,
Mm-hmm.
right? There is a phase in my life where there was nothing but competition,
Mm-hmm.
right? Whether I felt it or not. I mean, there was nothing but competition. Women
Right.
were someone that we competed with. We were competing for
Exactly.
men. We were competing for a job. We were competing for recognition at school. We're competing, not partnering, not teaming, competing. Then, as I became an adult, I remember my first job being at lunch or breaks with the girls, and they were
Hmm.
gossiping about whoever was not at the table that day.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
realized that that's what they did.
Hmm.
And I looked at them. I looked around the table and I went, I can only imagine what you say about me when I'm not at the
Exactly.
table.
Yeah.
And not one of us here is perfect,
Hmm.
right? And so at a very young age, I started to realize the judgment that was going on. And
Yes.
it wasn't until I became an entrepreneur and worked with women supporting women that I
Hmm.
discovered how powerful women can be when they drop that.
Absolutely. And I think one of the interesting observations I have about women helping women is that there are so many women that say women should support women. But when you get down to it, how many women actually do support other women? Whether it's do you buy products from their business, whether it's do you vote for female candidates, whether it's do you look for female medical doctors, those kinds of things. To me are kind of a juxtaposition. Yeah, we'll help other women in friendships by being their friend and talking to them, but will we put our money where our mouth is and actually help? One of the things I've done is reach out to women to try and establish relationships on LinkedIn. And I would send messages like, would you like to have a coffee chat? And I'd like to get to know you better. You wouldn't believe how few women respond to that. It's almost like they don't have enough time.
Wow. You know,
Yeah.
what's really interesting is I would say yes. Well, first of all, I would have to be sure you're not trying to sell to me because so many
Well,
people,
that's
that's what they're
true.
doing on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But I'll give you an example of what works for me.
Okay.
Um, I will say at the end of a podcast, if I'm being interviewed, here's how you get in touch with me. And if you get in touch with me through social media, I will not friend you if I don't know you. So do
Hmm.
say you saw me on such and such a podcast. And
Right.
I've been getting that. Oh,
Hmm.
Gail, I saw you on a podcast with so and so. It was so great. I would like to reach out. And okay,
Yeah.
now I will say yes. Right.
Right.
So if there is some way that you can tell me, here's why I'm reaching out to you, and it's not a
Yes.
sales, you got especially women. And I don't disrespect men. I love men. I have great relationship in business collaboration with men. But, if I had a choice between a guy and a woman and they were equal, I will pick the woman because it is so important for us to support the feminine right now.
Exactly. And one of the messages I've used is, would you like to talk to see if we would be mutually beneficial referral partners?
Right?
And still, I do get some responding, but the majority don't. So my point is it's time for us to get honest with ourselves, to dig deep into who we are and ask ourselves why we tend to help men more than women, why we turn to men more than women,
Right.
and say, what's at the root of that? Why? And then let's break the chain. Let's make it so that our daughters have a different environment than we had, you
Right.
know?
Right. So that they have more opportunities. I will tell you, and here's a perfect example of why I love female entrepreneurs. When I first became an entrepreneur, I was like you, were very successful and went up the ladder in corporate because I was
Mhm.
a type work, work, work. And when I became an entrepreneur, of course, I had no idea what that meant. And I very fortunately joined a woman-owned, woman-focused um, co-working place. And that
Mm.
particular place, they had programs to help you, get your business up and running. They had programs once a month if you wanted to get venture capitalists. here's how you can come and practice your pitch. We'll give you feedback. They supported women in every aspect of a business. And I met women who did not fear me, but embraced me in business.
That's
Yes.
fantastic.
Yes. So I saw with my eyes how business can grow. Now, this particular business, the owner had a vision, and she had a board of directors that she would meet with, women. Once a month, they'd go out for coffee or wine. That's what women do. Daytime coffee, evening wine, and just throw some ideas out. And then how can we support each other in making this happen?
That is fabulous. I think what I've found, I'm a divorce and empowerment coach. And so I am talking to other people in the divorce pipeline, whether it's attorneys or financial professionals and that type of thing, is that there's certain women I connect with, that we have similar values and a similar vision and a similar way of operating. And when that connection happens, it is beautiful.
Isn't it?
And it is strong and it's valuable, and both of us benefit. I think that's part of it. With what you said about LinkedIn, people trying to sell you something, it feels like it's just a one-way relationship.
Right.
What can I take?
Right.
And I think, women need to balance the taker and the giver.
Well, and women tend to be, and this is all generalizations. I know there are women out there where there are exceptions, so don't take offense, right? But in general, women are givers and feel uncomfortable being a taker, right? That, and then there's the mistrust of other women, right? And I will be honest, it took me a while to learn how to ask for help. It took me a while to learn that it's okay for me to grow and leave people behind, right? Because women are nurturers, and that feels very foreign to leave someone behind, right? But you're not leaving them behind. You're moving forward, right?
Exactly.
So you just reframe your conversation to what is really happening, right? But yeah, I mean, I am just so thrilled with what it is that you're doing for women on all of your various platforms. To help them, this word empowerment, there are men who are also in the same situation. As an empowerment master, I've coached men and women, and believe me, men have the same problems as women. They're just more quiet about it, right?
Well, they're embarrassed.
Yes. Yes, and feel that they also feel that they need to fill a role, right? And they don't understand what changes that are taking place since the 60s, since the 70s.
Right.
How do they fit in now? Because the paradigm that they were taught didn't shift.
Right.
Even though the world is shifting, their paradigm hasn't shifted. Right? And the same for women. I don't think women's paradigm has shifted enough yet.
Yeah. Well, you brought up something real interesting about women's mistrust of other women. Where do you think that comes from, and what can we do about it?
Well, that's the gossip thing that I was talking about. That's where the mistrust comes from. I'm not too sure what we can do other than to model a different behavior for the teenagers, because that happens, in the teenage years. Women children, so girls tend to hold a grudge. If you get snubbed or whatever, you hang on to it. Boys don't. They don't really hang on to it. Some do, but in general, again, these are generalizations. And so how can we teach our younger counterparts to release that, to forgive but not condone? If someone did something disrespectful, you don't have to condone it, but you can forgive them, because forgiveness is about releasing that yourself.
Right. It's a gift to yourself.
Right. It's setting yourself free so that you can move on in whatever direction you want, rather being moving on based on an emotion that has nothing to do with you anymore. That's over with. It's done. Right. And so it's that type of thing is just model, model, model,
Hmm.
and show, women together. I have some female friends that I just adore. And one in particular, twice a year, holds movie nights for just women. And, down in her
Interesting.
basement, it's set up like a movie theater. And we bring snacks and we spend the whole day in the middle of February out of the snow and we watch a marathon, right?
Ah,
And, we have our wine, we have our cheese, we have our gossip, and we have a blast. And then in the
yeah.
summertime, she puts a screen up in the backyard and, we fight the mosquitoes and we watch outside, right? And
Yeah.
that's just women bonding as women. And we talk about family and we talk about business. I had another friend who she had a business. It's called Chick CEO. You might want to take a look at the history of that because she got sued by men because she blocked them
Mm.
out and lost the
Ah.
suit. Okay,
Mm.
but her belief, and it's true, is women network differently than men. She said, Gail,
Hmm.
we get into a meeting and we have and we're talking about, oh, I like your shoes, where did you get that purse, and your
Hmm.
makeup is looking awesome, hey, by the way, I have such and such happening, do you want to collaborate with me? You don't get that with men, but women
Right.
start off with the little catty gossip first, right?
Right.
And then they get into serious business.
Well, and then I think sometimes that next step that's serious, we don't know how to do. We don't know how to transition from, oh, I like your outfit to something else. We're
Right.
great at, I like your outfit networking, but not the other. So teaching them how to make that transition or that shift to the point that it's comfortable within their style is something really important.
And that's really important, the style, right? Because
Hmm.
the feminine approach is playing the long game.
Hmm.
Men don't play the long game. It's hunt kill, right? What's
Hmm.
happening this month, what's happening this quarter.
Right.
Women will nurture the relationship. If I like you, I am going to get to know you some more. I'll give you an example of someone that we will be collaborating. We met at a networking group, we had a one-to-one, we shared each other's podcast, and now we're both writing a book.
Hmm.
And she said, hey, do you want to be my accountability partner? And so every other week we get together and we literally shut the screen off and we write. But before we write, it's like, hey, so what's going on with you? What's happening with the family? What's da, 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 right? And then it's like, okay, so 10 minutes of writing and then we'll get back together. You shut it
Hmm.
off, 10 minutes of writing, we get back, right? And so then and so it is a long game. And then
Hmm.
after this is done, we don't know how we're going to collaborate yet, but we're getting to know each other at such a
Yeah.
deep level, right? It's
Right.
not surface,
Hmm.
right?
Absolutely.
And so I think that is also one of the issues is how do women enter the workforce when they are naturally accustomed to the long game,
Hmm.
right? And how does the long game fit into the short game playing board,
Right.
right?
And what I found kind of in my professional career in the corporate side is because I was insecure on the inside, I put all my energy in looking together and confident on the outside. And I think people know that. I think people can see that. And I think that leads to feelings of mistrust. I think they
Right.
don't know why they don't trust you, but
Mhm.
it's kind of a vibe. And it also, I think, created stress for me because my inside person and my outside person didn't match.
Right, absolutely. I will tell you, and again, this is probably the last 5 years, I would say, that I've become comfortable enough to tell you what I see, right?
Hmm.
And I'm one of those people is I'm going to sense you before I don't hear a word you say. I sense you, right? You
Mm-hmm.
can, the mouth can go as much as you want, but I'm just going to, my recorder wants me to record it. I'm not going to. Um, and so what happens is, I'll give you an example. So I'm at a meeting with this gentleman who is a coach, and he wants to coach women, and he's telling me all about what he does. And I'm looking at him, not believing a word that's coming out of his mouth,
Huh.
right? And I looked and I told him, and I will do this now, whereas when I was not sure of myself, I wouldn't have done this. I
Mm-hmm.
said, I'm someone who maybe you could have coached, and I find you disingenuous, so I wouldn't hire you.
Wow.
And if I
That's
am,
strength.
yes, if I'm the person that you're looking for, you need to figure out why you're coming across this way to me,
Mm-hmm.
right? So I'm sure that was a slap in the face. But what's interesting is a couple of weeks later, I saw him at a networking group, and he sat there in front of all of these people and said, I have to figure out who I am. There's something wrong with the
Mm-hmm.
approach I'm taking, and I think I don't know who my customer is.
Exactly. I think the way I learn things is through pain. I had a girlfriend once similar to you, and I was whining to her why I wasn't in a relationship. And she said to me, Beverly, why don't you take the time you spend whining about not being in a relationship and use it to become the kind of person someone would want to be in a relationship with?
Oh my God. Yes,
That
I would say
that
that.
was such a zinger. It hurt so bad, but gosh, it was so true.
Well,
And it just was the perfect message to pounce me, to make me willing to then do the work to
right.
be a different person.
To who you are, who do you want to
Yeah.
be, and let that person out. I had a client that was looking to get into a relationship and was having a difficult time, and and like every coach, so let's make a list of all of the attributes that this person would have. And she went on and on and on, Superman. When she was done, I said, so who are you that this person would show up? And she stopped. I went, I'm just asking, of those attributes, which one do you have
Mhm.
that this person would even show up? And
Right.
she couldn't answer that. I said, so if this is who you want, this is who you need to become
Yep.
for that person to
My,
show up. Yeah.
yeah. I had kind of the big moment, the big shift in my life from who I was to wanting to become someone totally different when my ex-husband said to me, Beverly, you make everybody's life miserable that you come into contact with. And for the first time, I had to admit he was right. I don't know why I had to admit it, because every other time he said something to me, I, came back at him. But that made me take a look very seriously at who I was, and made me look at all of the things about me, good and bad,
Right.
and what kind of person I wanted to be. So, and then what I needed to do to get there.
Right.
But I think, like I said, pain is a great motivator.
Why would we move or change if we are comfortable? Unless you're someone like me, I like chaos. I will purpose, because chaos means change.
Yes.
It means change, and change is always eventually beneficial.
Mhm.
Yes. So I was going to go somewhere with this, and then it just slipped out of my mind. You know, um, so 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 Beverly, I know what I was going to say. The whole process of personal development and
Mhm.
accountability, vulnerability, integrity, right? And that it starts with, not showing others, but showing yourself, right? What
Mhm.
happened with me is that as I shifted and started looking at things a little differently, I literally saw friends disappear.
Mhm.
And they either disappeared or they tried to bring me back,
Mhm.
right? And with things like, blame and shame and guilt and judgment and all of that things thrown at me. And And I'm at the point now where it's like, I don't own that. No.
Yeah.
Where in the past I'd be like, oh no, I made you angry. I didn't make you anything.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so tell me a little bit about the process of losing or the crabs trying to pull you down. What were some of
Right,
those
right.
experiences and how did you deal with it?
Yeah. Well, somebody told me once that life was a dance and you were dancing in a circle, but when you want to change, you step out of that circle and the human being wants to pull you back. That's a natural force. They don't want you to break loose and be different and grow. So what I found was that people became uncomfortable with particularly how honest I was and the ability to look at myself.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's kind of like an alcoholic in recovery. When they're with somebody that's drinking, it makes the person drinking very uncomfortable because they have to take a look at themselves.
Right.
So in my case, I was doing a tremendous amount of digging and digging into the the dirt, the stuff that was not good about me. And they didn't like that because they were really uncomfortable and it made things bubble up to the top for them.
Right.
So all of a sudden, when they saw that I was convinced and adamant to do that and that they couldn't pull me back, they disappeared.
Right.
So what I found is that I don't think I can change that, but what I can change is the people I now bring into my circle. So that, one of the things that's important to me now is only bringing positive people. Don't bring toxic and negative people into my circle. And even if they're in my life, let's say if it was a family member or if it was a coworker, I don't have to invite them close enough to me for them to do any damage. I can keep them more at arm's length, and I need to develop boundaries so that their negativity doesn't cross over into me. I used to be the kind of person that when somebody had super intense emotions, that I would take them on and wear them and feel them.
Mm-hmm.
And particularly as a coach, I've had to learn that there is a line between me and there's a line between someone else. And there's a line between my feelings and their feelings. And that was really hard to do. That was really, really hard to do.
Yes, a lot of people will use the empathic abilities as an excuse. Did you lose me? Can't hear me. Can you hear me now? How about now? Now? Okay. We're going to just change this. Okay, so Beverly, did I get back on? Can you now hear me? You can't hear me. Oh no. How about now? Can you hear me? Jeez, hold on. Can you hear me now? Yes, you can. Okay, so here's the deal, Beverly. My microphone is working because I'm watching it. So, dang, dang. What's that? And so,
I'm going to say that one moment Beverly is going to try and I love technology.
That's it. I hear you now.
Okay, I love technology. We almost ended this soon.
2 in a row.
So we were talking, and I will say, I'm sorry for the gap in our conversation, but we were talking before we recorded about how technology is really funky these days. Now we have touched nothing, and Beverly all of a sudden couldn't hear me. So of course I tested my microphone thinking that was me, because sometimes I will shut myself off. And then I saw the microphone was working, and I had to send her a message. No, Beverly, this is you. So I'm letting you guys know. and and she figured it out. So
sorry about that, guys.
Fine. That's fine. That's what I love.
I didn't do anything. I don't know what happened.
I know. And it is funny about what's going on with technology. The point that we're trying to make here is that, you don't have to stay in the story that you're in. You don't have to try and do it alone. Please don't. And there are women for women out there who are ready, willing, and able to support your journey if you're ready, willing, and able to do the work.
So where do we find those women?
Right? That's the thing, is where are they? If you know somebody who maybe it's you who is ready to drop the pain, drop the shame, drop the blame, drop the judgment, and find out who the heck you really are, then, reach out to someone like Beverly, reach out to someone like me, and have that conversation about what it would look like. What are the possibilities? Right. And so, Beverly, if people wanted to get in touch with you now that we've gone there, how would they do that?
Absolutely. Well, my website is herselfexpression.com, and that's where you can find out about my podcast that's called Her Self-Expression, my coaching business for divorce and empowerment coaching, and my communities that I've built, and my blog. Or you can find me on Apple Podcasts and the other places you normally listen to podcasts.
Exactly. And so glad that we had this conversation, Beverly. I think we could have gone on and on. I really do think we have so much in common. So folks, this is Gail Kraft from the Empowering Process podcast. If this resonated with you, let us know. Give us a thumbs up. If this is something that maybe brought something up, do comment, and so we can get back to you on that. If you know somebody who could benefit from this, please do share it out to them. And as always, please subscribe so that you know when the next episode is coming up. And this is Gail Kraft and Beverly Price saying thank you for your time. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Empowering Process podcast. Be sure to visit Gail at gailcraft.com to learn more about how she serves thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and goal seekers. And remember, if you like this broadcast, be sure to share and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.